Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Good evening from London Soho, where an act of solidarity is in midway here outside a pub where a bombing occurred only 17 years ago and more people were shot down. This is an act of solidarity with the LGBT community across the world. It's one which is being repeated in every country on earth. Tonight in London we have them, in New York, in Sydney, and in Berlin, and in Britain we shall be travelling up to Glasgow and to Manchester. All over Europe and across the world you have LGBT communities coming together in solidarity with Orlando. Also tonight, from the city of Sirte in Libya tonight, IS fighters are surrounded on three sides by troops loyal to the new Libyan government. And in Marseille, in the aftermath of the weekend's football violence, England supporters who were arrested start to be jailed. Well, now let's start by going to Krishnan Gurumurthy, who is there in Orlando, in Florida. Krishnan.
Good evening from Orange Avenue, Orlando, yards from Pulse, the nightclub where 49 people were murdered, clearly targeted not just as Americans, but as gay, lesbian and transgender Americans. A host of details about the gunman and his possible links to Islamic extremism have been released today, and now all but one of the dead have been identified. America's president warned his country about the gun laws that make such attacks easy, while suggesting this attack by a US citizen may not have been directed and planned by Islamic State, even if it was inspired by them. Here's what we know so far of what happened. Around 2 a.m, the gunman entered the building through one of the main entrances. Eyewitnesses say he opened fire with his automatic weapon at the crowd on the main floor. An off-duty police officer in full uniform and nightclub security fired back. A gun battle began. Some clubbers fled outside. Others hid in corners and bathrooms as the club posted a Facebook message saying, "Everyone get out of Pulse and keep running." Police reinforcements arrived. They rescued dozens of injured outside the club. Inside, the gunman took several hostages in one of the rear bathrooms. In an adjacent bathroom, 15 clubbers were hiding. A standoff began. Around 5 a.m, police used explosives and an armoured vehicle to punch a hole into one wall and got the hostages out. The gunman then emerged from the opposite bathroom and after a brief gunfight was shot dead. While more details have been emerging throughout the day, our Washington correspondent Kylie Morris begins her report with the last communication from one son to his mother.
He texted me at 2:06 and said, "Mommy, I love you." In the club, they're shooting, trapped in the bathroom, downtown. Please call police. I'm gonna die. Call them, Mama, now. He's coming. I'm gonna die.
Eddie Justice is not coming home. One of dozens of victims already named. One of dozens of gay men and women for whom the Pulse Bar was once a place to feel safe, to feel at home. But on Saturday night, just before closing, one man armed with a heart full of hate, a handgun and a semi-automatic rifle turned it into a death trap.
You heard the first ring of gunshots go off. A lot of people thought that it was just maybe a beat. Then you hear it continuously going on and on and on and on. And then when you hear the shells hit the floor, you know everyone is quiet because they don't want to get killed.
And how long did you stay inside at that point?
I was inside for a good 20 minutes. And it seemed like it was 8 hours.
Where did you go? What did you do?
I ran and people were jumping over the gate. And he was still shooting, and you could see bullets hitting off of the glass and off the ground. It was just a massacre.
The FBI had twice investigated the gunman, 29-year-old Omar Siddiqui Mateen, for possible links to terror. But last week, he was able to purchase legally the arms he used with such deadly effect. that despite a history of violence, which his ex-wife had reported to police.
A few months after we were married, I saw his instability. He started abusing me physically very often and not allowing me to speak to my family, keeping me hostage from them. He was mentally unstable and mentally ill.
On Saturday night, Mateen held a handful of strangers hostage inside a bathroom until finally the sun rose and the police made their move, punching a hole in the wall of the club with an armoured vehicle.
We were able to rescue dozens and dozens of people that came out of that hole. The suspect came out of that hole himself, armed with a handgun and a long gun, engaged in a gun battle with officers where he was ultimately killed.
When police walked inside, officers were told to tune out the sound of phones ringing in the pockets of those who died. It was the sound of their friends searching for them. Gilbert Crispin just found 2 of his friends injured but alive in hospital.
They were trying to survive. They talk about people getting shot and they were under the corpses and they were trying to stay there until everything was cleared up.
Even as many still wait for news and others begin to bear their grief, the investigation into how this happened is well underway. The president today commenting on Mateen's links to terror.
It does appear that at the last minute he announced allegiance to ISIL, but there is no evidence so far that he was in fact directed by ISIL, and there also at this stage is no direct evidence that he was part of a larger plot.
The gunman was American, but a Muslim of Afghan heritage, more than enough to fuel Donald Trump's fire.
The Muslim community, the community where this maniac lives, the people know who the bad apples are, where the bad seeds are, and they don't report them.
Among the thousands in Orlando who turned out to give blood, one young Muslim who refused to stay hidden.
My mom called me crying today and asked me please to take off my hijab, but I don't want to be driven by fear, and I can't let Donald Trump take that away from me.
In the city's main gay and lesbian church, there was harmony in the discord. Prayers for the living and promises of resilience from a community vowing never to bow to hate.
And Kylie is with me now. Kylie, we need to consider a couple of specific things about the gay community here in Orlando, don't we?
Indeed. I mean, firstly, look at that list of names, the names of those who've died. Many of them are Hispanic names. That is in part because not only there is a big kind of Hispanic community here in Orlando, but also because it was Latin night, tragically Saturday night. It's a night where the whole night's conducted in Spanish, all the music is Latin, so a lot of, the clientele were drawn from that community. But part of the reason why I think we're finding such resilience in the community is because here in Orlando, we're very close to Disney World. Disney is one of the first companies in America that actually had a policy of equal benefits for gay partners. Now, as a result of that, there is a very strong historic gay and lesbian community here in this area. And what we were hearing at that prayer service, at the vigil last night, was that they will be more unified by this. They're rejecting all the kind of political talk of division, the talk of separating Americans. And there's really this very strong sense of this community pulling together to support one another.
And that's why they can say here that an attack on the gay community is an attack on all of us.
Absolutely. I mean, someone we spoke to last night was saying, look, I don't have any contact with my family. These people are my friends. They are my entire community. We have to support one another.
Okay, well, let's take a look now at the victims of the massacre. Most of the 49 people who were murdered have now been identified and their families informed. Most of the 50 who died have now been identified and their families informed. Among them, 20-year-old Luis Omar Ocasio Capo, who was a dancer. His teacher called him a ray of sunshine. 22-year-old Luis Vielma, who worked on the Harry Potter ride at the Universal theme park. J.K. Rowling tweeted she couldn't stop crying when she heard. 23-year-old Stanley Almodovar, a pharmacy technician. His birthday is later this month. 25-year-old Amanda Alvier, who was in the club making a Snapchat story which caught the start of the shooting. 34-year-old Edward Sotomayor, known as Top Hat Eddie to his friends, was shot in the back as he tried to usher his boyfriend to safety. And 36-year-old Eric Ivan Ortiz Rivera. He was only at the club after going there with friends who he'd been at a housewarming party with. Well, with me now are two people who have lost dear friends in the massacre here, Eddie Anderson and Drew Sizemore. And Drew, you work at another gay club in the city, and you knew many of the people involved.
Yeah, personally, I'm up to about 8 friends now that were killed right behind me.
How can you describe the impact of something like that?
It's devastating. That's the word that I keep using over and over. It's devastating to our community. It's devastating to our city. It's devastating to America. And the outpouring of love that I've seen from our community has been the bright spot in this entire ordeal.
What have you heard about there last night?
Well, we had at the Parliament House, is where I work. We had this impromptu vigil for the people that had lost friends. Anybody that wanted to come, our doors were open. Feel free to come and just hug and cry, and we're here. We're open, and we're contemplating closing, but that's not the way that we operate here. We're here to show the country that we're resilient and that we're going to thrive from this, and we're going to survive, and we're going to come out bigger than better than before.
Do you see this as an attack on gay Americans, specifically, that you've been targeted as a community?
Absolutely. It happened at a gay nightclub for someone that proclaimed to hate gays. I don't know how much more clear we can get than that.
Eddie, let me turn to you.
Yes.
Your friend Luis was in the club and lost his life. Tell me about Luis.
Luis, actually, he wasn't even gay. He was just with a friend of his that was in town apparently, and he ended up going, and he ended up losing his life there also. So even as a hate crime against gays, it's still just wrong that you're taking the life of human beings in general.
What did he do here in Orlando?
He actually worked at Universal. He loved his job. He worked for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. He was an attractions operator. So he helped people get on the rides, and I brought my wand today. This is the last reminder that I have of him. I actually ended up getting this with him at Universal the last time I was there with him and my girlfriend, and it's Sirius Black's, and he's my new favorite wizard now. So
he's the man that J.K. Rowling has talked about, and has said that she's been unable to stop crying. Since hearing about his death, and there's been a tremendous reaction.
And I mean,
she tweeted pictures of him this morning.
Yes, she did. And we're trying to raise awareness. There's a GoFundMe page on my Facebook for his family to help cover the funeral expenses and stuff like that. And I mean, Lewis loved his job. He loved working for Harry Potter. That was his favorite thing. And I mean, I think it'd be awesome if we could possibly reach out to J.K. Rowling and possibly maybe even do some kind of tribute for him.
What do you want people to know about the friends you've lost?
I want people to know that. Sorry.
I'm sorry to ask you a question like that. It's a horrible question.
I just want them to know that, we're good people. We're about love. We're about respect. We're about having a good time. And that's all those people wanted to do that night. They just wanted to go out and have a good time. And at a space that they felt safe and that they felt comfortable. And that space was invaded. And it was a terrorist attack by someone that really has no business even being at a place like that. That's where we feel safe, and that's where we go to unwind. And when somebody comes into your house and does something like that to you, I just want everybody to know that we're gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay from this. We're gonna be resilient. We're gonna be steadfast in what we do, and we're gonna grow from this.
What's striking as well here is that there's none of the sort of macho, we want payback kind of reaction that we've seen from other
This is all about love right now, and we've seen the biggest outpouring of love that you can imagine, not just from our gay community, but from the straight community, from the entire city of Orlando. Everyone has showed up in droves to donate blood. They've showed up to those lines that are a mile long to donate blood. People are just walking by handing out water and handing out food, and just the outpouring of love, and it's just been incredible.
What more do you want to say about Lewis?
I mean, we just want to remember the people we love. There was a lot of people that passed away, and as far as my friend Lewis, he was honestly one of the nicest people that I've ever met in my entire life. He was one person that he didn't have a bad bone in his body. He's one of those people that no matter who you are, he's gonna be nice to you regardless. You know what I mean? And even if you're not nice to him, he'd still be nice to you in return. So I mean, it's it's crazy.
Eddie, Drew, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you
for coming tonight. It's such a terrible time for you both.
Thank you.
Well, more from here soon, but now over to John, who is in Old Compton Street in London at the vigil there.
Well, I'm here in London's Old Compton Street, the heart of the LGBT community. The Metropolitan Police Day have increased patrols in areas like this, visiting gay clubs and offering reassurance. But what I want to tell you now is that there is the most enormous crowd here. This street, solid, Dean Street, solid that way, solid that way. Take a look up here, up on the rooftops, all the way across here. 10,000 people packing into Soho, and not in a spirit of tears, but in a spirit of utter solidarity with what has happened in what is most clearly a homophobic attack in which, of course, as you now know, 50 people died in Orlando. But here the spirit is one of utter togetherness, of actually a sense almost of joy. Let me talk to you, because you're a doctor and you're a teacher. What I find interesting about today is there's actually almost a sense of uplift, that people are somehow pleased to be together in solidarity with this desperate tragedy in Orlando.
I think there's definitely a sense of gratefulness for community right now, as well as devastation for the lives lost and the...
And what amazing music here from the London Gay Men's Choir and Pink Singers. I've never heard them before.
No, they're fantastic. It's important to come together, and it's important not to be complacent, I think. We've had so much progress, but homophobic and transphobic crime happens every day in every part of the world.
It's not just young people here. What's your thought as you're here?
Well, we have a community these days. When I first came out, there wasn't a community. We all scurried into clubs through sliding doors. Now we can all come out here freely.
So despite this horror, you feel a sense of safety together?
Well, a sense of community, a sense that we're all here, we're all queer, and we can shout out about
We're all here, we're all queer. You heard it there. We'll be back here later to discuss the impact on the LGBT community, but now back to Krishnan in Orlando.
Well, the FBI is now investigating whether Omar Mateen, who declared allegiance to Islamic State hours before the massacre, had worked with anyone else to plan the attack. President Obama said it appeared the gunman had been inspired by extremist ideas spread over the internet, but no evidence that he was directed from outside. So what more do we know about the man behind the Orlando killings and his actual motivation? Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Jonathan Rugman reports.
29-year-old Omar Mateen had worked as a G4S security guard for 7 years. His ex-wife suggested he was mentally ill. His Afghan-born father said he had been angered by the sight of men kissing in Miami, and today he apologized for what he called the act of a terrorist.
If I did know a 1% that he is committing such a crime, my son, I would have arrested myself, I would have called the FBI, I would have called the local law enforcement. I don't know why he did what he did. I wasn't aware of it. And I always paid attention that he should get higher education and serve the United States of America.
So-called Islamic State said online that Mateen was one of their fighters.
البداية من أمريكا.
And in this radio message it talked about an attack on a crusader gathering in Florida. But President Obama says there's no proof IS was involved, suggesting that preventing sales of powerful guns is just as important as countering homegrown extremism.
We are also going to have to make sure that we think about the risks we are willing to take by being so lax in how we make very powerful firearms available to people in this country. And this is something that obviously I've talked about for a very long time.
Mateen bought a pistol and an assault rifle like this one, the AR-15, used in attacks from San Bernardino to Sandy Hook. But though the lobbying power of America's National Rifle Association is again under fire on this front page today, don't expect Donald Trump to back any change to assault rifle laws.
Well, first of all, there are millions of them already out there, millions upon millions. So they're already out there, number one. And I absolutely wouldn't, because people need protection. They have to protect. So the bad guys will have the assault rifles, and the people trying to protect themselves will be standing there with a BB gun.
Mateen was first investigated by the FBI in 2013. He was interviewed twice for making what colleagues called inflammatory comments about radical Islam. In 2014, the FBI interviewed him again after he claimed a connection to an American who became a suicide bomber in Syria. The Bureau decided that contact was minimal, and he was reportedly removed from a terrorism watch list. Last December, the Senate voted down a law which would have blocked terrorist suspects from buying guns. But even if it had passed, it wouldn't have stopped Mr. Mateen, because he had no criminal record.
I don't see anything in reviewing our work that our agents should have done differently, but we'll look at it in an open and honest way and be transparent about it. Our work is very challenging. We are looking for needles in a nationwide haystack, but we're also called upon to figure out which pieces of hay might someday become needles.
If the FBI is watching you for suspected terrorist links, you shouldn't be able to just go buy a gun with no questions asked.
Yesterday's attack may have been inspired by this IS assault on a concert hall in Paris last November. IS gunmen shooting civilians, then taking hostages before being shot by security forces. Before he was killed, Mateen told police he was acting in solidarity with the Boston Marathon bombers as well as IS, so his path to radicalization was perhaps no less confused than he was.
Just before we go any further, I just want to say that at the top of the program, very sadly, we lost our transmission from the United States, and they unexpectedly had to come to us here in London, where unfortunately the 2-minute silence was already underway. And I do apologize for the breaches that we created in that.
I've been getting away